Welcome back to the science seminar series. Just to start next week, we'll have a talk from Masood Harecki, and he will be doing his talk titled Netley Marsh, Lake Winnipeg's Kidney, Environmental Changes Through the Past and Present and Future. That'll be on Zoom, but we'll still be meeting here like usual. Today we have Dr. Rutherford's talk using iNaturalist to document species adventures in Southwest US. Dr. Rutherford is an associate professor in the Department of Biology here at Brandon University. She has served as environmental science coordinator, chair of the Department of Biology, and president of the Canadian Herpetological Society. Currently, she is co-chair of the Amphibian Reptile Subcommittee for the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada, which is responsible for designating species at risk in Canada. The research program studies the importance of peripheral and disjunct populations to the conservation of species. The objectives of this research are twofold. One, to determine the genetic diversity and differentiation of peripheral and disjunct populations and the conservation consequences of these patterns. And two, examine the combined effects of habitat fragmentation and biogeography on conservation of species. Her research had traditionally focused on Canadian lizard species, but more recently she's working on amphibian and reptile disease and their impacts on species conservation.
Thanks very much, Carter. All right, welcome. So today's talk, I'm going to have a series of slides, but I'm also going to be flipping back and forth between slides and the iNaturalist webpage and even bring up the mobile app. So if you're curious about iNat, and you want to sign up for an account, there'll be a moment as we can walk through that. Or if you are an iNaturalist user, you can play along with a little bit of game. I expect you'll all beat me in terms of how many species you've documented, because I'm still fairly new to it. But yeah, so if you've got your phone or your computer handy, I'm gonna walk through that. So basically, I'm gonna start with just a very brief introduction about what iNaturalist is. And then this is the kind of more active portion, take a few minutes and walk you guys through how you can add an observation. And the main reason for that is just to show you that it's actually super easy, because I'm hoping I can get some converts from my talk today and get more people adding observations to iNaturalist. And then I'm gonna peel off a little bit. So I had a sabbatical from January to July and traveled throughout Southwestern US. So this might be a little bit more travel-loggy, but I was using it as an opportunity to get more iNaturalist observations myself and learn more about the app. And then I'll talk very briefly at the end about some of the ways that the data gets used. And as Carter mentioned in the introduction, I serve as co-chair of this committee here. It's an Environment Canada Climate Change Committee, and I'll talk about why the iNaturalist data is so incredibly important to us. So this is the website here, it's iNaturalist.org, and I'm gonna flip between the slides and the website itself. So that figure. There's hopefully you can see the basics of it. It is probably fairly tiny. I blow it up too big, we'll slop off the side. So this is what it looks like when you first jump into iNaturalist, and I'm already logged in, but I'm gonna step you guys through what that sort of looks like when you're not logged in. So it's just a very straightforward kind of sign up, email, password, and then once looking the wrong way. Once you get that signed up, then you can see here that I'm logged in, and you can see basic information about my account. And then there's a ton of information that's associated with the observations that are within that. So throughout the talk, I'm going to walk through with a series of examples and kind of highlight. It's not going to be a everything you're ever going to need to know about iNat talk. It's really just a brief introduction. So this is what it'll look like when you're not logged in. And then in this left-hand corner, you see log in or sign up. So if anybody's brave and wants to dive into that, or anybody that is an iNaturalist, make sure you get logged in, because we're going to play a little bit of a game. So sign up or log into your iNat account. So once you've done that, okay, how many people in here are actually or have even used iNat for like once? So, oh, that's better than I was hoping. So, okay, well, I still got a lot to convince, but hopefully I'll show you how good it is. So any of you guys that put your hands up, well, how many observations do you guys have? Chris, what do you got?
If you
I'm
would
gonna put you on the
have for-
spot.
Well, I downloaded it. It says, looks like you have no observations. So that's why I'm here.
Okay,
I have
wow, we can be-
35.
you got, so Alex has got 35. Anybody else? 140. 140, nice.
Wow.
Oh, all right, so have you hands over here?
1200.
I knew somebody was gonna put me to shame, of course, you know, Jackie. Have you been using it too, Anna? No.
Yes, but I don't have any observations
Okay.
currently, so.
I am obviously very new to it, so when you click on, so what I did here, was all of these are tabs that you can go through and see all sorts of information. So I just clicked on observations, and this is where I got kind of the overview. So I have 150 observations. Those are spread across 114 species. There are 105 identifiers. So I'm going to come back to that. For me, that's one of the really amazing, useful tools about iNat. And then one observer, and that's me. And then you can see over here on the right, these are some of my more recent observations that I've entered. And then you see a big map here. And all those red squares are all the areas where, or regions where I've entered observations. And you can see down here, this is the area I'm going to talk about today, where was the travels throughout southwestern US. So I got 150, 114 species. And then, like I said, the location's the easiest. Yeah.
Just curious, because I'm sorry, I don't know your name. You seem kind of curious when you said you had no observations either. I know I've used it.
Oh, okay.
So is there your iPhone resets or adds, is there a way you can lose them?
Not to my knowledge.
Use it for ID,
Yeah,
or how do you-
so,
Yeah, I was using it for ID.
So you may not be posting your observations, like these other
Oh,
people.
so they don't automatically get.
no,
I don't know, so I always use iNaturalist too, I always use Seek, the app for ID, and then it links to my iNaturalist, like I can post my observations, I never use iNaturalist directly.
I use iNat to ID species, we'll get into that a little bit
Yeah.
more. I'll walk through it, and I primarily upload from the mobile app, but I'll put my iPhone on the screen and I don't know, that might help, but it might be that you're not actually doing that last step, and that might
Right.
be why they're not getting posted, yeah. Cause I've never had any issue with them ever going away, I've never had any issue with the website, I don't know, any other users had any? Okay.
I think that's what I was doing too, I was
Oh.
just using it to ID something and then
But
not
not
posting
actually
it, yeah.
posting them. So close, we'll get you
Yeah.
guys out of the threshold. I feel like you're my low hanging fruit today, so, okay, so. Locations are the easiest, so adding observations. So what I wanna draw your attention to here is iNat has a massive amount of help videos. And you do link those all from the main iNat help page, so if I go back here to my observations. And I go back actually to my main page here. Notice up here, there's these main tabs, so you can just explore, look and see. There's a lot of observations worldwide, right? These are my observations here. But under more, notice there's this help tab here. And so one thing that they've done a really, really good job of, I'll blow this tab up a bit better. And I won't play any of the videos, I'll let you have a look at them, is that, the top two, how to make an observation with the mobile app and how to make an observation from the website. And I'm gonna touch on both of those today, because they're both super easy to do, and that's my main goal. So there's really good resources, or just Google stuff, but there's really good resources. So What I would strongly encourage you to do is just use the mobile app from your phone, because that for me is the absolute easiest. When I'm sitting at home and I want to browse things, or maybe I want to add more information to an observation, so I'll show you there's some additional fields that you may not initially have information on. That straightforward to do. But and the thing that I think is a huge misperception from a lot of people I talk to is that you need to have cell service in order to use iNaturalist, and you don't. You can, if you have cell service, then you can post your observation directly in the field. But if you don't have cell service, it's very straightforward. You can take a picture and upload it later. I'm gonna actually go through this process with you guys today, just to show you how to upload that, because I saw a cool little snake over the weekend and took a picture of it, and I actually haven't uploaded it yet to iNat, so I wanted to go through that with you guys. If instead, and I know lots of my friends and colleagues have like big fancy, and I do as well, have a nice DSLR camera, fancier camera. And so then you're probably going to want to do it through the website. It's also really straightforward. You can use your phone camera and do it through the website as well, but then you got to get photos off your phone and then onto your computer and then up through the website, which may or may not be the easiest thing. So I would recommend using the mobile app. But if you have a DSLR camera, then you're better to go through the website. What you want to make sure though is that your photos are geotagged. So that means there's a location associated with them. All photos will have a date and time associated with them, especially if you've ideally got that set correctly in your camera settings. But I feel like if you're running a DSLR camera, you're probably gonna be fine. But like so there's a lot of different ways you can do it. The primary one, the easiest one, is just straight in the field, or when you wander home to do it later. So before I head there, head to the Southwest US, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up my phone. I don't know if there's a way to make it bigger. Is there a way? I don't think it will expand. I think it is the size it is. So apologies, but hopefully it's. You should be able to make it bigger. No, you should, but I'm not. No, it just sees. So literally 10 minutes ago, Chris and I were chatting and he's like, are you using iNat Classic or the new app? And I was like, okay, no. So I'm actually using iNat Classic moments ago, just downloaded the new one, but briefly looking at it doesn't seem that complicated. So if you open it up, I am on an iPhone, but I've had Android phones in the past. To me, the apps looked almost identical. I didn't notice big differences. So I'm gonna just pop into iNat Classic. So I just clicked on it because I'm logged in with my account. It's going to immediately open up, and these are a list of my recent species. So if you want to upload from your phone, so this I'm pretty sure I had no cell service because Manitoba, I swear 90% of the province has no cell service. So I just took a picture of the snake. I was also in kind of hurry, so I just jumped back on my bike, took off, and then upload it later. Totally fine. That's really all you need to do. So once you come back, then you're just looking for this middle button right here, the camera. And you're going to click on that. And then again, this is the iPhone version, so it might look slightly different. So if you're in the field and you have cell service, you can click right on the camera itself. Otherwise, if you've taken the picture, you can just click on the photo library. And so it's going to bring up. One of the things that's really helpful is to take a few different angles of a species. So I actually knew this species because we don't have a lot of snakes in Manitoba and I work on them all. And I knew this was a red-bellied snake, so I knew that it would be a good idea to get a picture of its belly. But yeah, if you're taking pictures with plants, right, and any hopefully basic biology folks, you want to get some leaves, maybe some stems, and obviously flowers are helpful. So it can be helpful to get a few photos, but bulk of the time I literally have one photo of some semi-blurry thing going by, and it's quite stunning how good it can be. But in this case, I had a few minutes. I did have it in hand because I also was trying to get the snake off the rope. Sidebar, snakes are moving this time of year, there's tons of them on the road, so please, if you can, get them off the road. That would reduce mortality and that would be wonderful, so you can upload up to, this is what this says up here, up to 8 photos. So I'm gonna just select and add all 4 of mine. So it's kind of a few different angles, probably overkill. And then I just sync or click on the check mark. And then this is this button here that comes up. And this is where I use this a ton, especially when I'm dealing with species that I don't know what they are. But you can click on, what did you see? And so what it's gonna do is gonna load observations in the local area that looks similar to what you are looking at. Now, and I literally, this is the first time I'm doing this with you guys, so you'll have to trust me, but. So what it's telling me is that it's likely in the family Colubridae, which is a snake family. And it's actually telling me that it is likely a red-bellied snake. Top suggestions, red-bellied snake. So I use this a ton, as Chris was kind of saying, like almost just to figure out what I'm looking at. So I just need to go to the next stage and get it uploaded. So here, you can just say yourself, but I always get it to suggest, then I select it, and then that is literally all I do. So I'll show you the in a bit more detail the data that gets added on, but basically once I've done that, it says that's here, then I just click share and it uploads. Now, depending on your internet connection, sometimes it's takes a few minutes so you can see this bar and it's just uploading it. So you do want to make sure that you wait for that. Although I think the next time you reopen the app, it just kind of starts again. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's syncing, so it's getting it into my account. And now I have 151.
So that's the step, the last one you did that
Yeah.
puts it into your database.
Puts it into your database.
So that's what
Yeah, so that's the piece that, yeah, anybody that's IDing it, just click the share. Then that would be amazing. So it's literally that easy. Can you take a photo, fuzzy or otherwise, and click, I don't know, 3 buttons. Camera, what did I see? Share, and that's it. You're done. Now you've got observations in iNaturalist. So it's super easy, but also really helpful to help you ID different species. So that's as easy as it is. The steps, I'm not going to walk through the website, but it's similar idea. You just find your photo and then you'll see sort of more, and I'll show you in a minute some of the more data that it's looking at as I walk through some examples. So, okay, so that's the introduction to iNaturalist. Now is the travel log portion of the trip. So, of the talk. So, on my sabbatical, which was January to July, did travels down through Southwest US. So kind of Brandon's up here. So we shot down here real fast, right down to the Gulf of Mexico, and then spent some time along here, and then a little bit of time through here, and then beelined it back up. So I'm going to show you a few of my iNat records and a few other videos from that trip. If you cross-reference with my iNat map, you can see this was kind of the bulk of where my observations were. And probably a good chunk of my 150 were on that trip. I got a little better after that in terms of getting some closer to home. So first chunk of the trip, as I said, we beeline down to here. So this region here, right down on Gulf of Mexico. So this red square here is this blown up portion there. And so down to this area, the town is Corpus Christi, starting off there. And then I'll show you a few observations through that part of Texas. So we had a lot of national parks, national monuments, national seashores, national stuff, and then a few state parks as well. So Padre Island National Seashore is just off the coast of Corpus Christi, a lot of sand, and just absolutely beautiful. We kind of beeline down there because there was a polar vortex in January. I gather it was a little chilly up here. It was nice down there, but definitely below normal down there. But that's what the seashore looks like. I was immediately kind of taken by the plants. Plants are a great place to start with iNaturalist because they don't run around. And so I saw this, it's the genus is Gaillardia, and we have Gaillardia here. And I was like, damn, sandy soils. I work in the sands out here, so I was like, this is a lot of sands. So right out of the gates, I logged the firewheel plant, which is genus Glardia, different species than what we have up here, but looks really similar, habitat looks really similar. And then we headed up north, and first time I've ever seen a greater roadrunner or any roadrunner in the wild, and of course, saw lots of them after that, and just have to say, maybe. So it's super fun. I actually did get a picture of that. So we were in Garner State Park, which is in Texas. From there, we headed back around. So the last point of this was Big Bend National Park, which is right down on the border. And this was the first of many unbelievable sort of glowing cliffs and mountains. And so this was the view from our campsite, just stunning.
That's sunrise or sunset?
This was sunset. Yeah, yeah. Not that, and then many unbelievable canyons as well. So we hiked into this one, and we actually did have some pretty hot days, so it was really nice to kind of get into some of these canyons. So there, again, sticking with the plant theme, but I started to come across, of course, you'll see a theme with this trip. There's a lot of deserts, sand, rock, and cactus, many cacti. So tree choyas, or choyas, starting into choyas, they were really hard to identify. And so that's where iNaturalist became incredibly helpful for that. So I did manage to get this one, or took a stab at it, thought it was actually the species of tree choya. But I'm going to dive into the observation details for this record just to give you kind of a sense of what that looks like in iNaturalist. So this link will just open up this particular record in iNaturalist. So this is the observation. I submitted it January 27th, so right in the field. This is the picture. So one picture, where's the flowers on there? That's helpful. With choice, it seems to do with branching and fluffiness. Just seems like a weird word to use with a cactus, but so you can see there's lots of records of this in the area, which makes it really helpful. And if you recall, I mentioned that I had 105 identifiers. Well, related to that, and again, one of the strengths of iNaturalist is that other people will come and verify your records for you. So I posted this, I have the date on it. In my experience, people were typically looking at my records almost within 24 hours and kind of verifying or not. There's a huge community on iNaturalist. And so this fellow, Andrew Dudley, he confirmed. So it basically just confirms, yes, this is the correct ID. Now I had lots of species where I have the correct ID. So you can go back and change your ID as well as you kind of learn what's there, what's not. And then if it's all particularly species that are challenging, you sometimes get kind of a list and somebody will say, well, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and I think it's this. And then it kind of can land on a consensus, obviously, ideally, not information. So Andrew and I were both sure this was tree choya. I'm pretty confident that it was. As I mentioned, there's other information that you can add. You may not want to add this in the field, but you can go back and add some annotations. So if you're a plant, you can add information about flowers and fruits or leaves, potential sex, etc. So, and this is just the more information that you can contribute to an observation, the better. And then, and I'll come back to this later, projects. And touch a bit on that. So those are kind of the key pieces that I was able to add as I swept through this. So in terms of those details, what you need to have, so
If you took a picture of a tree choya at one place and then took it at another place, do you end up with two records or does it merge them?
No, two different records because they'll be tied to the
They're
location.
tied to the location.
Exactly, yeah. So with every single observation, these are kind of the key pieces that get added. So the picture, just a cell phone picture generally works great. What you saw, so you may not know, but that's where that, click that button, what did I see? It'll suggest some things to you. So it could be just a group, so quite high level. You might be able to get it to genus or family. So with my red belly snake, it said family Colubridae, but you might get it right down to species. That one was crystal clear. There's no other species in Manitoba that looks like a red belly snake. So it's super easy to know where you saw it. So your cell phone, unless you turned off location services, and you can leave them turned off, but just turn them on for iNat, but it would be incredibly useful to have them turn on for iNat, then you will get those, that GPS location. Easily. And then if you're using a DSLR camera, again, you want to make sure your records are geotagged when you saw it. So again, every single photo you take in your phone, you've got date, time, down to the second on it. It's all associated with that image. You probably, if you haven't done deep dives into images and videos, you wouldn't know, but there's a massive amount of information associated with that. Who saw it? So your name. So, you know, ideal, if you're concerned about that, your identity on iNat, you can give yourself a username and people could not track you down. I do think it's a relatively safe space, I think, but unless your name is associated with something, then it's going to make it difficult for an observation to be considered research grade, which I'll come back to in a minute as well. And then that last piece, that activity, so ideally somebody else will come and verify it. If nobody verifies my red-bellied snake, I don't think there's a big problem around that because it's absolutely certain. And then, you know, depending on how much you post, you can also become sort of experts on certain types of taxa as well. And so then when you come in and ID something, then obviously that gives it some credibility. And it is really important that an observation be considered what the term iNat uses research grades. That means it's verified is the language that we use. Okay, so heading back on my travels. So I'm now like one block west, so we're heading west here. So Big Bend is here, and then we headed west over to southern New Mexico and then into Arizona, just a bit west of Tucson. I'll get to Arizona in a minute. So we were headed to White Sands National Park. We stayed the night before just east of White Sands, and there was a whole bunch of this really interesting species of plants, bushes, salt bushes, and I did actually get one of these down. 2 species, and I was pretty confident of that. So you can see that research grade tag there because it's ticked sort of all those qualifiers that I showed in the previous record. So White Sands, if you haven't been to White Sands, it looks exactly like the sign says. It is just a mountain of white powdery sand. It is unlike any place I've ever been. I mean, our sandhills are cool. This was just a whole other level of cool. And of course, it's a good workout going for hiking and holy doodles, but just stunning. So I think I did do some records there. I won't show you, and I swear to God, like if I showed you or turned the audio on for this video, it would just sound like me panting because it was a heck of a workout. So from White Sands, we headed over to southern Arizona. So White Sands is kind of over here. So next block over, this little square here. So this is Tucson, Arizona. So we stayed down in southern Arizona. Again, the big reason for this is there was a polar vortex. So we were just staying close to, this is the Mexican border. We were staying very close. That said, we plan to go there anyway, just because it's just really amazing. So sticking with the national theme, Chiricahua National Monument, just unbelievable. So this place, less about sand and all about rock. So these are these pinnacles. This is like straight just on the side of a road. We went on a hike, and this is kind of a pan of that hike. So just some incredible rocks in that area, just stunning. A lot more greenery, so not as many sort of cactus, but lots of still very dry. So starting to get into a whole bunch of different oak species in this area. And again, they look like oaks. You're like, okay, that's an oak, but I don't know what kind of oak that is. And there were many oak species. So at this point, you can see, so I did take a picture. I just said, okay, it's genus because it's an oak. Far as I got, but you'll notice that this record doesn't have that research grade on it because obviously I haven't got it down to species. I actually haven't popped back to this one to see if anybody's been able to help me out. In this case, I could very well have just not taken a good enough photograph that they can get it to the species, but was still kind of starting to experiment and got a little better. I'll show you with my oaks in a minute. So, from there, we headed, so from Chiricahua, we headed over to Oregon Pike National Park. You can imagine what the theme of that is. So, I did not, I'd never seen these things alive. Call these just cartoon cactus because they have the funny arms on them. I did not appreciate how big they are. Oh my lord. I don't know if it comes across in this sort of pan up, but oh my lord, just stunning. And just everywhere, tons of these guys. So while not a novel record, I had to add a Suero observation. So the point I want to make with this is that even if you're like, these species are everywhere, I don't need to add this to iNaturalist. So if you have this notion that, oh, iNat's just for the rare species, no. The more information, so even extremely common species, so I popped in my Suero, pretty confident that that's what it was, got a research grade. So not too novel, literally the park is named after it. We did go on a hike from there, so if you head up, kind of up into some of the slopes, you do get into some different habitat. So this is my first non-plant record. So fortunately, this guy was not alive, but giant cactus longhorn beetle. I don't know anything about beetles, but so the only way I was able to get this actually accurately identified was iNat. Big guy, very big. It was just out on the trail. This is what the trail kind of looked like at the top. We kept climbing, thinking we were getting to the top, and then I'd take the Instagram photo, reach the top, and then we'd go further. And then I think I have about 5 Instagram photos. The hilarious thing is when we landed at the actual top, ran into a very lovely couple, and because we were a little bit not sure where that kind of final little piece was to get, we're like, well, we got this far, we got to get right to the bitter end. And turns out they were from Canadian and they literally lived next door to my PhD supervisor and they knew him. I was like, it's a tiny world. So on top of a mountain, we found 2 Canadians in January, but unbelievable. So you can see not as many Oregon pipes up here. You do get into some different vegetation up here. Okay, so from Oregon Pike, so we're down in this area, we actually beelined up north, did go to the Grand Canyon. I actually connected with my sister and brother-in-law up there and didn't do a ton of iNatting. We were doing a bit more just visiting, and we did do some hiking and things. But on the way, we did stay outside of Sedona, Arizona, so kind of almost up. There's the Grand Canyon right there. So here's Sedona. And I was getting a little better with my oaks. So it was really neat campsite. There was a couple of different species of oaks. So again, I was kind of trying to use iNat to sort of learn. And look, and I got it. So saw a Sonoran scrub oak. And this was in the Coconino National Forest, I think it was. And considered research grade. A couple of people confirming that I'd ID'd it correctly. I actually don't, strangely enough, have any, and then I'd seen some others along the way, but starting to see some centuries plants. So again, not knowing what those species are, so I'm kind of behind on those IDs. I was kind of just taking things one step at a time. So got it to genus agave. You can see again, that's not research grade. And it just may not be a good enough photo, and that's okay. It's still useful information, even if you're only identifying getting it to genus level, it's still super useful. Okay, so I actually don't have photos from Grand Canyon, I realized this morning, but from the Grand Canyon, it was cold and there was snow, and Flagstaff's a big ski place, so there was snow, it was cold. We were camping, so these things don't go together, so we said goodbye to my sister and we just jumped in the car and drove southwest as fast as we could leg it, just trying to get down into some warmer weather that was a bit more comfortable. So this is about, you can see this square over here is about as far west as we got, almost kind of, well, I guess if you think of it as a triangle. So, seemed like almost the furthest that we got from Brandon. So we headed to the Mojave National Preserve, and somehow this wasn't on my list of places to go to until I was looking at a map, and I'm like, Mojave Desert, that pretty sure I've heard of that. That seems familiar. So we were like, well, let's just go there. So we did, and it was incredible. But this video clip that I'm going to show you, you may not have thought of this as the Mojave Desert. So there's a huge volcanic activity in the area, and there are these things called lava tubes. And that ladder looks kind of as rickety or is as rickety as it looks, but basically there's several holes in the ground with a rusty rickety ladder, and you can climb down in, and there's these tubes that get left over after a volcanic eruption. And if you're down in the tube, this is me kind of crawling along with my camera trying to show, I'm kind of crawling through this opening, and then it actually fully opens up. That's my husband, he was traveling with me. And then there's these where you see those lights, those are actually openings up, so you kind of see this incredible sort of hole out. So we had no idea this was there. We literally kind of stumbled upon it, but honestly, it ended up being perhaps a highlight of the trip. Really cool. We did go see the Mojave Desert because, as I said, it's sand. It's all about sand. I do enjoy the sand. So we started this hike, and we were gonna climb up. Yeah, we did. Oh my God. Again, if you've never hiked in sand, it's stunningly hard. I don't think we got anywhere close to up on that. What was really amazing about this hike, almost more than anything, is what's cool about sand is that you see all the tracks that animals leave. And so I just was endlessly fascinated with all these sort of invertebrate tracks. There were definitely lizards in the area. So that is the Mojave Desert, no shortage of sand, incredibly cool. Really neat plants. So again, this is from Mojave Desert National Preserve. This is a tamarisk, and they just have the weirdest kind of air quote leaves, or a botanist can correct me, but they look more like needles almost, but really interesting. Again, never seen anything like this, was able to figure out the species using iNaturalist. So from there, we headed over to Joshua Tree National Park. So you can imagine, this is all about Joshua trees. This is a Joshua tree. They are really cool. They're not as tall as the saguaros, but maybe I just didn't really expect them. Joshua tree is also extremely well known for climbing and rock formations and stuff. So lots of just really cool rocks. But perhaps the highlight is this was the first time I'd actually seen a reptile or an amphibian. We had gone hunting for some in Oregon Pike. We went down to a wetland area where there was supposed to be this toad that I think it's the only place that kind of dips into the US, but we were unsuccessful. But we were finally successful in Joshua Tree. It's an extremely common lizard. It's called the common side-blotched lizard. Very easy to identify. But I was so excited about this because this lizard has been really well studied for its behavior. And so we would sit at our campsites and just watch the lizard. So you can see them. This is a male. And the reason I know he's a male is he's going to do little tiny push-ups. And so he's displaying to the other males. And he's running around, and we did actually watch an encounter. If there's a certain angle, you'll also see some coloration. So what's really famous about this particular species, so see the blue, is that there are 3 different colors of males, yellow, orange, and blue, and it's their throat patch, and they have different strategies to attract and keep females. Some of them just go with one female, some of them try to have as many females as possible and guard them, and some of them just sneak in while the others aren't looking. So they're literally just called sneakers, and they just run in and copulate and run back out. So I was just so excited, and we could have just watched this guy forever. And I did the tiny push-ups, just cracked me up forever and ever. You can probably see as well, he's lost his tail and it's regenerated. You can see it doesn't have scales on the outer bit. So not the best camera work, but not too bad. I was pretty happy. So we were pretty happy by the time we saw these lizards. So this is down, this area is Joshua Tree right here. We headed up to this area, made a few stops to visit people, but we're primarily headed up to Death Valley. So coming near the end of the journey. So we're up in here in, it's kind of more central California, more than anything. Here's Las Vegas, so it's a little bit, parts of Death Valley actually are in Nevada, but most of the park is in California. So Death Valley National Park, so it's just got a bunch of key features. This is a salt flat. So this is all salt. Do not forget your sunglasses, holy, it's just like blinding. This is minus 80 meters, so it's actually below sea level. And it's famous for that, and the salt just goes on forever and ever. Not blisteringly hot, that's actually Drew in this bucket hat, and so we had our sleeves on. It was actually pretty cool overnight, and then it would get warmish. I don't know that I would go to Death Valley in like July, August. I think that you'd literally die. That's why it's called Death Valley. We were there, and this is February, March by now, and even then it was pretty uncomfortable during the day. So very, very cool. There saw lizards again, so super excited about that. So saw not as many as we'd seen in Joshua Tree, but still a few. Perhaps the most unique and possibly traumatizing experience in Death Valley was we got caught in a sandstorm. So we are driving. Again, audio is muted because most of it is just profanity. Like I was like, we are gonna die. You can get a bit of a sense of like how visibility, it kind of ebbed and flowed. So it's like a snowstorm, but different. So yes. So we, because we were camping, we're like, no, we gotta get out of here. We cannot stay. Of course, extremely high winds, which is why the sandstorm. So we actually drove through Death Valley out into Nevada, went to a hotel / casino, because it's Nevada. And in fact, there were power outages there because of the sandstorm. Hey, Garrett, yeah.
So would it be a salt storm if it was close enough to the flats?
It wasn't that, this was not that close to the salt flats, but there's probably salt in there. Wasn't sticking my head out to taste, but yeah. I mean, there's chunks of this where you can see bits. There are definitely chunks where it was like zero visibility. It was bizarre. But it's, it's the same as when you're driving in a snowstorm, like, do I pull over, but then I'm gonna get rear-ended? Do I just keep going slowly? So, yeah, the Canadian winter driving kind of held us in good stead, but, so, don't know that I planned for one, but it was really cool.
What were you using to take the videos?
I have a GoPro, or a GoPro-like thing, and I just had it mounted on my car.
Were you using those
yeah.
for the pans and the salt pan?
Mix of stuff. I use my DSLR, I use my iPhone, I use my, GoPro. So quite a mix of stuff depending on, yeah. Okay, so that's, Death Valley was kind of the end. We dipped a little bit in, we did go to Hoover Dam because I just was like, gotta see a giant dam. Don't know that I needed to, but I did. To be thoroughly depressed. We just mostly looking for, bodies floating up. The lake, small lake levels are really low. And then we ended up kind of beelining home-ish from there. But I'm gonna sort of wrap, this is the end of my sort of travel. I wanna take the last few minutes just to talk a little bit about what this data can be used for. So I haven't got you on board yet about how fun it is to learn about species. Maybe I'll get you on board with, we really, really need this data in conservation. And we really need as many people as possible to be engaged. So one of the ways is through projects. And I'm gonna also talk briefly about how we use this data as part of the work that I do for Coast State Reg. So iNaturalist projects. And this is one I'm gonna walk through in a minute called the Manitoba Herbs Atlas. It's been around for quite a long time. And I'll just kick again over to iNaturalist. Okay, so it's under the community tab, so it is moving a little bit slow, but you'll see projects. And I don't know if it's an internet issue or yeah, sorry, I clicked way too many things, so it's not going to catch up. So, and you can see them as well if you've got your app open, you can have a look on your app. The very far right is projects, and so you can click on those. And what you can do is you can join different projects. Let's see if I can get this going. Yeah, please just have an app. I'm not quite sure what it's mad about. Maybe I'll just be a bit more patient. So, I might have to just talk about it from this slide. So projects work in slightly different ways depending on how the project has been set up. And so, for example, with the Manitoba Herp Atlas, you do need to actively add your observation to a project. And so you would do that within your observation. Other projects, you can set them up so that they will simply collect any observations for data within a certain geographic location. So it's going to show you an example of the project. Jackie had worked on some data that was collected as part of this from Laurentian University in Sudbury. And so they had just delineated. So basically, anytime anybody posts on iNaturalist and location lands in on the grounds of Laurentian University, then it just is automatically added to that project. So in that sense, observers don't need to do absolutely anything. With the Manitoba Herp Atlas project, they had been set up to collect a bit more information. And so when you walk through this one, it actually pops up a screen and asks you to add a little bit more information. And so there's a lot of variation around projects, but it can be it's just gonna ever so slow. Website.
It's just you, because I'm popping through all sorts of things on my phone.
Yeah, I feel like something went weird with Porto, but oh, maybe we're back. Okay, so let's have a peek here. If I go to projects. So I just clicked on projects, and this is all of projects that are recently active or recently created. If I want to look at my projects, I can click manage your project. So I actually had in the way back here set up a project called Manitoba Mixed Grass Prairie Plants. I actually used it when I would hire undergraduate students. They wouldn't necessarily all know their plants. So this was an easy way because it was a much smaller pool of plant species that they would have to figure out. So when we were collecting data, they could use this to help them. This is the Manitoba Herp Atlas project that I had showed you in a minute. And then if I go, so for example, let's go back to my observations and let's go to my red-bellied snake. So this is the observation I just walked through with you guys and uploaded it. I'll scroll from there. So if I want to add that one to a project, so the way that one was set up, it doesn't automatically add it to the project. But if I want to add it, again, I would need to know the project, but I do. So I could type Manitoba Herp Atlas, select that. And so with this one, it pops up some additional information that you could add. But as I said, lots of times they just go into projects and automatically, and they can be incredibly helpful. So Jackie's gonna, those of you, well, you guys will all hear about it as he walks through his talks and gives his talk in December, but he's got a project set up related to his master's work. And this is going to be really helpful to get information about where species are in Manitoba that will provide him with really useful information for his data. So there are a huge number of projects out there, and that is a really useful feature for sure. And then the second one that I wanted to just walk through is, so it was mentioned in my introduction. So I serve as the co-chair for amphibian reptiles for this very long species or committee name that we just shortened to called COSEWIC. And we are responsible for assessing conservation status of all species in Canada, literally everything. My job as co-chair is just amphibians and reptiles, which is a pretty small job compared to the vascular plant chairs or the arthropod chairs, but we still have a lot of work to do. And what's really important information for us, incredibly important information, are records of species, and including location and date. So hopefully you can see why iNaturalist might be an incredibly important resource for COSEWIC, and it's become more and more important to us over time. And one of the things that is so useful that I've touched on throughout the talk is that we can very easily, I won't walk you through, but it's super easy to download data from iNaturalist, but you can restrict that data to research grade observations. So you know that these are verified locations. And because it's this huge pool of people who are just out hiking and walking and biking or finding stuff in their garage, it's way more data than any biologists are ever gonna collect on their own. Now, one of the wrinkles with this is because again, the task with this species is species at risk. So what that is a longer way of saying things like endangered species. But one of the things that is a bit of a challenge is that posting locations of species at risk would reveal where people could find those. And for some of the species, that makes them very, very vulnerable. So for example, we have some turtle species that are really vulnerable to the pet trade. And so the other incredibly useful feature within iNaturalist that you can dive into is ways of actually posting those. And then the language that iNaturalist uses are called geo-privacy settings. So again, if you are starting to get active, involved in, and I'm getting more into the weeds on iNat now, but if you happen to be aware of it's a species that may be, maybe as a species at risk, what you can do is you can actually modify those. So the default, you don't touch anything, you just post stuff, and most of the time this is what you want to do. They set geo-privacy to open, and that just means that literally they down to whatever the accuracy of your cell phone is, and it's actually the GPS on these suckers is pretty stunning these days. Theoretically somebody could go to that exact location and find that species. But what you can do is you can change it at the time of posting, or you can go back in and change it. So you can actually change your geo-privacy settings to obscure to private. And this is something that we look at extensively within a COCIVIC, only for a few species. So for example, I work on prairie skinks. This is a lizard that lives in Manitoba. They are a species at risk, but I've talked to so many people that have lived in Manitoba their whole life and hiked forever in spruce woods, and they can't find them. So I don't really worry too much about revealing the location of a prairie snake, because I'm like, good luck. Or a hognose snake, which is even more endangered, like, geez, I can't find the dang things half the time, so good luck. So the vast majority of species we prefer to be open because then we get all the data, and that's what's really important to us. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of roll it all back up. So I'm really hoping that I've got a few, or at the very least, I got Anna and Chris are gonna hit share. So I feel like it's a win. It's fun, and actually I have friends, okay, definitely in the nerd land, but really super competitive. So you can turn it into a game if you want. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of my photos from my travels and touched a little bit about why this data is really important to us, which again, I'm hoping will convince you to become an iNaturalist. It's a verb, it's an adjective, it's all of those things these days. So thanks very much for taking time. And this was in fact the last part that we went to. This was Petrified Forest. So that is Petrified Woods. So happy to take any questions or comments. So thanks for joining me today.
You download the data. Does it come, is it in an Excel, or is it's in a format, you can sort it, you can manipulate it in all the ways you want?
It dumps it in a CSV file, which is like a simplified Excel, but yes, super easy. Sometimes I end up putting a bunch of requests in, so sometimes it can take a few minutes. You can also just have it set up that it just sends you an email when the file is ready, but it is extremely user-friendly, very simple, very straightforward, very sortable. Yeah, really, really useful. So we use it a lot for some of our initial kind of species evaluations. So we actually have a big meeting on Monday. We're going to be looking at, okay, how is this species doing? How's this species doing? And we're actually going to use iNat and pull data from it. So it's dead easy. Yeah.
You have to use it before you can call it iNat.
Yeah, so you're already there. Yeah. Yes.
Let's say you have a mathematical model where you have to estimate the population parameter for as you go and pick up observations. Can you automatically update your model parameter or you need to wait and download the data and then process the data?
Probably sort of the latter, but I would say that we don't typically, I would be very cautious about using INAT data to estimate things like population sizes. It would give you it gives us pretty good estimates in range. But it has this fuzziness to it, right? That you're gonna get a whole bunch more records in areas where people are. And we call that search effort. And so areas where people aren't, it doesn't necessarily mean the species isn't there. So we don't tend to use it. We can't use it to do that level. We need more like, controlled surveys and experiments to actually get that kind of thing. That said, I think that is something that people are looking at because I think there is some potential there. So I don't know if this will make sense. So we have a hard time sometimes estimating where uncommon species are. So I'll use my hognose snake as an example. So they do live here in Manitoba. They are in Spruce Park. I can't find them. They're really hard to find. And if we're trying to estimate, are they not there or are people just not looking for them? What we actually are using iNat for is, well, how many records are there in that area of a really common species? So we can kind of use that information. It's a very crude estimate, but that is one way that we're exploring it, develop that kind of tool. I don't know if I'd call it a mathematical model, but yeah, we're sort of exploring that use of iNat, yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't a system like that create potentially extreme bias towards rare species?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Yeah, so people tend to post the things that are really weird, which is exactly the reason why I think it's problematic to use it to estimate population sizes, because lots of people won't. Garter snakes, common garter snakes. You're not gonna find that many posts in them. So that's a very, very good point. So again, what it is primarily helps us with is more like range. So is there a record? Did somebody find a species that's not where it's supposed to be? Etc. I popped past it, but you can also upload sound. So amphibians sing, and buggers are hard to find sometimes, but they sing loud and clear. So you can actually record the sound, or you can actually use the sound, and obviously be very useful for birds. But yeah, Garrett's right. There is definitely a bias towards rare species. Yeah. Yes.
So do you have any parameter to determine if a particular species is endangered? So you can determine whether to switch to geoprivacy or not.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good point. So I have to double check this, and this is my next stage on this, is whether I could ask somebody like a COSEWIC member go in and actually say all records for this species need to have geoprivacy obscured. I'm not actually 100% sure if you can do that, because the point is, somebody may have no clue. They just take a picture and upload it, and they don't know whether or not they should be protecting that species. What I would say is the vast majority of the time, it's much better if your records are open, because that is far more useful. And there's a very small percentage where there could potentially be a bad outcome. But yeah, that's something I'm going to be looking into a little bit more on the COSEWIC side to see, as iNat's gotten hugely and more popular, is that something that as people who are responsible for protecting species should we be proactive? So yeah, I'll be following up with that. Yeah. Oh, actually, maybe I'll take your Carson, if that's okay. Yeah.
Is there like in the iNaturalist community, like one area or location where like people have like an iNaturalist heaven where there's just like species galore?
I honestly, probably a lot of the national parks and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sure there's spots. Because I used it a little bit a couple years ago. We traveled Borneo, so it's obviously worldwide, but off the top of my head, I'm not really sure. But yeah.
If you had taken samples of a species and you did make sure to note the location in which you found it, could you upload those?
Absolutely. Yeah, so you can type in if you got a GPS location, you can, or you can put a broader location in as well. So yeah, that's another thing I've been trying to encourage some of my older colleagues who have samples, is to get that data into iNaturalist, so it's kind of all in one repository. So yeah, you absolutely can. you don't have to just use photos from now, yeah. Did you have a different?
That was my question.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I think I've got through 30, so, oh, do you have a question? Yeah, go for it.
Is there something similar, like I was, you showed it was just North America, basically? Is there something similar?
This is worldwide.
It's worldwide,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is, yeah. If, I think I popped it up accidentally, it's probably gonna freeze, but actually, yeah, no, it's used worldwide. I mean, it's probably more predominant in developed countries, but, anybody that's traveling. Did you upload any, Jackie? Yeah, Jackie.
Pretty packed there, there's a lot there.
Was there? Okay.
Yeah.
That was, where were you?
Dominican.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, all over, and again, you could just take the photos and then deal with it when you come home. I tend to forget, so I just tend to try and do it in the field because my brain doesn't hold a lot of information, so, yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, I'll let you do the wrap up, and remind folks about next week's talk.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us today. Next week's talk was. Forget what it's.
The Sud Gareki, I think.
Yeah. Same time, 2:30, it'll be on Zoom, but we'll still be meeting here. Thanks again, Dr. Rutherford.